Sounds good.
It's off.
So I think we are recording now. So we'll just welcome you to Module 4, the last workshop before we end this lovely year of 2020, the year of amazing things. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. So we have that going. And
I just shared the slides in the group chat in case anyone needs the slides.
And so on. All right, so we got that. All right. Through here. And hopefully this decides to show up for us a little bit. Sometimes it takes a little time with slower internet. Okay. But just kind of taking a look here, we'll just kind of this part here since my full screen doesn't want to cooperate right away. But you know, like I said, welcome. Okay, like I said, this is our fourth workshop. So one thing, if you could do for me, is to take attendance and make that taken care of here just momentarily. Someone share that in the chat so everybody can have that taken care of. And then if you would, okay, well, do the attendance for us, please. And then on slide 9, if you fill out the welcome slide here, that would be great. So once again, slide 7, that's where the attendance is. Slide 9, that is where the welcome slide is. So we'll take a minute or two to kind of go through that, tie up some loose ends, and we'll go ahead and get started.
I like how Kay gave herself a C+ or a C for a grade. That's pretty generous if you feel like a train hit you. Am I jumping ahead of the gun, Scott? But I see Tina, only 9 days of school until break. Woohoo! You can do it.
I don't blame you. That sounds pretty good to me. Let's get my go through here. I'll share my screen here just in a little bit. We're having some internet issues, but yeah, kind of going through that. So yeah, just kind of take a little bit of time to read through those. I mean, yeah, 9 days. I think Del Rapids, I think we have 7 school days left. We get a nice 2-week break. So hopefully, Kay, it's not COVID. We all hope that. So
Right.
kind of crazy how life works and such. Okay, share my screen again here.
So
All right, well, kind of taking a look here. I didn't hear you there quite.
Oh, I was just
Okay.
gonna say that I was driving and I wasn't able to add.
Oh, okay. Okay, no worries. Stay safe.
Yes.
All right. So, all right. Of course, my internet doesn't want to be cooperative as much as I'd like. So, as we kind of go through some different things here, just kind of as we kind of come back with, the welcome, just kind of be aware that we have some of the important links that are listed there for you, as we always have, whether it's the resources, it's the Zoom, Google Classroom, the question parking lot. Janie's always puts together a nice question parking lot for us through using Padlet. So we'll make sure to reconnect to that. Everything's going on, whether it's, let me see here, just, kind of, like I said, it's been a long semester, and just a lot of challenges that I've went through, more challenges than we're probably used to. So, all right. Some of the opening logistics here, I think we've already kind of went through those several times through our time together. So I think we're pretty well versed in Zoom rules and some of those different things. So we'll pass on those as well. So roles in the breakout room really haven't changed. You have those in there. Whether it's the note taker, the share out, the timekeeper, also the discussion guide. We'll see if we use breakout rooms this evening. We may not. Kind of just depends on how many people we end up having at that particular time during the workshop. As far as what we're going to do today, obviously, we went through a little bit with the welcome, able to touch base with people. Just in a few moments here, I will go through a summary of conclusions and connections. Janie will go through our unit planning, and then Janie and I will also kind of wrap us up as we finish up things. Risa wasn't feeling well this evening, so she wasn't able to join us, but with everything on with her, and she'll be with us at our next workshop in January. So go through that. As far as our opener for the meeting, obviously taking care of the welcome details, what we're going to do next is just kind of one of those things when we have the prompt, just something I want you to think about. Maybe you type it down in your own Word document if you want. Maybe you think about it. Maybe you actually write it down on a piece of paper. But what does it mean for students to be active in the classroom? What sorts of things are students doing? What is the teacher doing? According to my clock, it is 8:08. At 8:10, we'll say at 8:11, we'll reconvene and we'll share out some of the ideas that you have come up with. Ready to go. So the question comes down to is the 3 prompts. What does it mean for students to be active in the classroom? What sorts of things are students doing? What is the teacher doing? Okay, I do have a response for this, but before I share my response, I'd like to hear what you guys as a group came up with. So what are some things that that you see in relation to these 3 prompts with your classroom?
Well, this is Kay, and I would be happy if the students were on the right screen and they were attempting whatever the task at hand is. Just give it a try. I can guide anything except just sitting there. That's hard to guide.
Yeah, that's the tough part is when people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing.
I could share some.
Okay, Nate?
So at this time in a lot of my classes, we're starting to get to those parts where it's almost time to do a summative evaluation, and we're getting to projects and practicing what we've learned, and in some cases they're working together, they're collaborating. So what the students are doing is there's a buzz, there's a healthy, productive buzz on either planning stuff or going through and carrying out their plans. And what I'm doing is I'm doing a little bit of both, facilitating and just observing their actions and discussions as they produce.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
I like that word, facilitating the learning. Very good.
Yep. Anything else that comes to mind? Yep. Very good. Very good. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Nate, for responding. In my experiences with this, whether it's with code, whether it's with other types of, for lack of a better term, STEM classes that we have in Del Rapids, in some respects, if the class runs itself without somebody getting injured, hurt, or whatever, that's probably that's a good sign. People are allowed to help those kids are allowed to help one another. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. The teacher's more of a facilitator than actually using the direct instruction. So when I think of this term of active, I kind of feel like the class is in some respects running itself. All right. All right. Anything else as far as slide 16, journal prompts? All right. Well, let's take a look here. Summary of conclusions and connections. So this is kind of what we're talking about here is, and I know some of you had some time to work with our asynchronous work. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. I get it. Life happens. I mean, there's 20 million things going on. I know we're trying to get at Del Rapids, we're trying to get a video board to work for the basketball game on Friday. So that's taken top priority. So for those of you that have a strong athletic program in your school district, you might understand sometimes that just takes the focus of everything. So life happens. Talk a little bit about kind of what we're looking for as the chapter 1 progressions. As we go through, really at this point, you can kind of take a look at, when we're dealing with app development and developing an app for other people, there's a lot of different phases that go in. If you take a look at the different lessons that are listed here, there are 6 lessons, and they talk about just kind of the where we go from point A to point B. And obviously one of the things that's a theme for this particular workshop and kind of that lesson part of things is putting ourselves into other people's shoes. What do other people want? Okay, and that's kind of where we talk about understanding our user. Because obviously, if we develop an app that isn't very good, or that we ignore the user needs, not a good situation. And this part of this slide right here just talks a little bit about some of the projects that students in lesson 7 are going to work with. And usually it's just kind of talking a little bit about interviewing classmates and kind of talking about how they would approach working with an app. All right. And I think a lot of times, just kind of a side note, as we develop apps, I think a lot of times kids are going to want to get on the computer and do some work with some different things. And this is the nice thing about this particular unit is it kind of takes some steps back where the students have to draw things out and, kind of do some what's the word I'm looking for? Paper activities work with the students. I remember when I was in industrial tech class, the frustrating thing, but it did help me, was we had to draw things out before we started to build them. And I hated it because I just wanted to get the tools out and start, doing a bunch of things. But we always had to draw things out and kind of have a plan ready before we went to the shop. So kudos to Mr. Bergjord for doing that for us. Okay. One of the things is, okay, and we come back to another journal question, and I'll give you 2 minutes to think about this one. But in chapter 1, how do students engage in iterative development? We talk about iteration, continuous improvement in order to modify, enhance, creative projects. Now, if you didn't quite have an opportunity earlier to kind of get in the asynchronous work, which I understand, just kind of think about, or you might have an opportunity through Google Classroom, just kind of take a look at some of those things just for, we'll say for 3 minutes, okay? And just kind of see what are those things that are going to happen for iteration. So we'll come back here 8:21, 7:21 Western time. So, and then we'll discuss those. Have a serial based on that question. I will apologize now, guys. I'm having internet trouble. So if I'm not sharing my video, it's not because I look hits and all that sort of thing and don't want you to see. Just to make sure that you can hear me and be able to see what's going on. So, what are some things? So we talk about that you see used in this chapter.
Scott, Kay asked you to repeat the question. Do we want to just show slide number 20?
Yep, of course. Yep. So we're on slide 20. Yep. Let's go ahead and we're going to share that. How do students engage in improved development? One of the things as you kind of look at this particular unit as a whole, as we discuss through it, is, obviously what the thing is like, let's kind of relate to our own personal lives. When you do something the first time, does it normally go well? Usually not. And I think a lot of times, there are things, sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. I just think about, I mentioned earlier about our video board. Okay, there's just always this time where we're working to improve, specifically to the needs of the audience. Okay, and the one thing that you're going to find with this particular unit is your students are really going to have to focus on the needs of the people that are going to be using their app. And you talk about, earlier we talked about that interview process where people are going, your students are going to have to interview and kind of model their app that they're going to build using the feedback that they get from people. So they're always going to continue to modify and improve whatever that they're going to build. Does anybody have anything to add?
It seems like this might be a good place for some peer review.
Yeah.
Maybe with some, maybe a guided peer review, like give 2 things that are good and 1 thing that could be improved.
That
Because
seems to
it's
work
just-
really well.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Good ideas. Yeah. Some peer review. Anything else? All right. Well, let's go ahead. We're going to be on slide 22 here. And just talks a little bit of the progression from chapter 2, from designing apps for good, kind of the marketing research, the paper prototypes, the prototype testing, the digital design, and then the linking of the screens. Now as we go through this, a lot of the activities that we're going to be working with, it's going to be, unplugged. meaning we're not going to be, don't have to necessarily be on the computer until the very end. Okay, so you can kind of work through those things. And as you were saying earlier, we talked about the peer review, you know, going in the research and some of those types of things. If you're a business background like I am, you have to know your audience and you have to build your product for your audience. So that would be a good opportunity, for, as you said, Kay, for peer review. Talks a little bit about just kind of the linking of the screens here. Kind of gets a little bit more of the technical part of different things. Just be aware that there's a helps and tips tab that is available there as well. Okay. And, you know, obviously, as she's kind of looking into the deeper progressions of kind of where we're going. And I realize that everybody's kind of in a different place with where they are with the curriculum. Some of you are right in the middle of it. Some of you aren't quite here yet. Some of you maybe are going to start next semester. But this, like I said, kind of gives you that preview, okay, of where students eventually, they take things from the paper that they've been working with, do some peer reviews. Then they take it online where they're able to kind of go through some different things, build an app, test the app, improve it, and the iterating, and then obviously put together a project at the very end. So as we kind of finish that, and you know, then at the very end, you know, you get to the app presentation. Each team that they're working in will share about their project and how things went with it and how things didn't go as well. So the nice thing about this is you know, you can adapt it however you want to whatever your needs are. So on and so forth. Okay. And then another thing we're going to talk about, I'll just give you kind of a minute to talk about here in chapter 2, what opportunities do students have to develop the practice of decomposition? Okay. And what we're talking about by that is just break large problems into smaller components in order to begin taking small steps towards the larger goal. Okay, so take a minute for that, and we'll have a short little share out, and then we'll let Janie take over. Slide 26. In chapter 2, what opportunities do students have to develop the practice of decomposition? So showed you a few examples on the previous slides. What are you thinking?
I think we just guide our students through the process and keep using that word process, that there's steps in process. You don't just boom out of the box, design a finished app.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think the main thing is that I think, Kay, you're exactly right. I mean, it's tough for I think it's tough for anybody. We always want the final product, but we don't necessarily want everything else that has to go into it. And that's the tough part. You know, I don't know how else to describe it. It's with anything in life. So whether it's sports or whether it's academics or whether it's anything. So, you know, kind of breaking everything into parts to get to that final goal. So any other insights that we have?
Thanks, Scott. I just got a flashback of high school basketball.
Oh,
Thanks. I'm just kidding. It's
yeah.
all good.
Yeah, it's always interesting how that, yeah.
But it's a great
The old
example on
flag.
how working at small things, like passing, for example, can make you a better team.
Yeah. Or learning how to shoot a basketball and actually make it rather than hitting somebody else on the head. Not that I've ever done that before. But okay, with that being said, let's go ahead. Now we are on slide 28. And I am going to turn it over at this point to Janie, and she's going to take us through unit planning.
Awesome. If you guys don't mind, I might just stay with my video off. My son is very needy right now, And Scott, if you wouldn't mind sharing for me, otherwise I can share my screen. I just don't know how well I'll be able to stay on track of what I'm doing. So basically you guys have gotten a pretty wow, oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff in Unit 4. You're seeing a ton of student opportunities for peers, the collaboration with peers. You're seeing students be able to work with the problem-solving process, and they're always going to be working on strengthening their communication skills. When you work with a group, it's really important that they talk and work together. So with this session right now, we're gonna just look at a couple scenarios, and we're gonna think ahead about some things that might happen in Unit 4, and then how we might address them. And then just to kind of go over this, we're gonna prepare how students can basically manage their own learning, right? How can we put it in their hands while they're working on teams? The goal is to focus on assessment, differentiation, and groupings to support the students when we're working in the short projects and the long-term projects in Unit 4. So to begin this little session where we're talking about Unit 4 planning, we're gonna just look at the resources that Scott needs to go to page 29. And then we're going to talk a little bit about scenarios, and again, just what might happen, some challenges to expect, and how you might address them. So let's go ahead and review some of these resources. And Scott, if you don't mind opening up chapter 1, lesson 6, just as a group, since I have my hands full here, I think if you want to just look at this as a whole group, take a second. So this is the project guide for paper prototypes. Thank you, Julie. And Scott, if you could also open up chapter 1, lesson 7, the project for paper prototype reflection. So again, the same project, two different documents. Thank you, Julie. All right, so while we're looking at this, if you don't mind, Scott, going back to that reflection, or sorry, the paper prototype project where we're identifying user needs. Just looking at this page, how can the resources provided support individual assessment? So again, we're looking at this as your students will each have this in front of them. How is this going to support individual assessments? If anyone wants to jump in with an answer or something that you thought of, how this works, how it supports you as a student, as an individual. Because as you can see, Unit 4 is a lot of group work. Thank you, Scott. I feel like Mr. Bueller, not Mr. Bueller. I feel like in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Anyone? Bueller. This is a tough one. There's a lot of resources in front of you. So kind of honing in. Do you guys want some more time to kind of look
Well, what
through?
do you folks think of in this define section? Sometimes it's easier to hear some honest feedback from a classmate than it is from the teacher.
You know, and I think what you're saying, Kay, is too, I mean, you can talk about in a lot of realms is We probably can all think of either a student or a colleague that if they say something to you, or the kind of, or vice versa in the student realm, is that one student says something or that teacher says something or that colleague, it really matters, if that makes sense. Sometimes well, do you think I was rude in that faculty meeting? And, maybe that one faculty member says, yeah, Scott, you were rude, maybe you need to adjust that, mean something. So I agree, Kay, with what you're saying too. Big impact, especially certain ones are what I call our influencers.
Hey, thanks for making that connection, you guys. So Scott, if you don't mind going back to the slideshow. I highlighted or I bolded chapter 1, lesson 6 and lesson 7. But as you can see, there's a lot of resources in front of us, right? There's the activity guide, understanding your user, and then the reflection, and then the app presentation. That's the exemplar. We could click on that too. But what I want you to get out of this is that there's tons and tons of resources and ideas out there to kind of look to see how your students are engaging, how they're being active. And like Kay says, sometimes just doing that with your classmates, you sometimes are a little bit more honest about what students need. Well, I might not need it, but my friend does. It's easier to advocate for a friend than it is for yourself in some ways. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide and look at, oh, we already kind of did that. Does anyone else want to jump in about individual assessment there? All right, let's go jump into the assessment scenarios. We could jump in a breakout room, but I feel like we would rather stay in a whole group. Correct me if I'm wrong. What are you guys thinking? Do you want to jump in? Okay, perfect. So what I was thinking, we could do this as a whole group instead of breakout rooms. There are actually 3 of you right now. So A, B, and C. I was gonna go with, let's do first names. So it'd be Nate, Kay, and Tina. Nate, I was hoping you would feel comfortable. Like, oh my gosh, alphabetical order. It'd be Kay first, right? Oh man. So Kay, if you feel comfortable, maybe taking letter A and doing a little response about how you would address that scenario. And Nate, you could do B, how you would address that scenario. And Tina, you can do C and how you would address that scenario. And whenever you're ready, I know I'm really putting you guys on the spot, but I think sometimes as a teacher, you're getting put on the spot 100% of the time anyway. So what's new? So whenever you're ready, whoever wants to dive in first, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself so you don't hear my baby screaming this whole time.
I've got, when a group is presenting, there's gaps, and when confronted, they don't respond. And then I actually had this happen like earlier this week. They had privately shared, like after class, like everybody leaves and the one student is staying behind and said, but it's kind of the reverse. It was like the group didn't do anything and they were the only one that wanted to do something. But it's very similar, but it's like one person is like, this guy didn't do stuff and that's why we were missing stuff. So then I suppose I would have, I don't know, have them just orally share, like, what could you as a group, take 1 minute to whatever, and then we could, maybe the class, we could discuss other parts of their presentation and they could come up with just that last part of it. And then I don't know, I wouldn't want to, I don't know, discourage this one student that didn't do anything by making them, do something embarrassing or, you know, whatever, like, but they'd have to be able to show that they understand it. So I guess they'd have to have like maybe, I don't know, another individual assignment on the side or something like that. Or, and then I don't know, for group work, that person just always individually has to do it. So then it's all on them when they do something. I don't know. That's a tough one.
It is tough. I think we have some, oh my gosh, I think we have some like psychological things happening tonight. What's that word? With what you should have as a prompt. Yeah, let's chew on that a little bit because it's definitely very real. It's happening in your classroom. Did anyone have a perfect response to what Nate just admitted? Like, I don't really know how to go about on the next step. No. All right, let's chew on that. If Julie, if you don't mind adding that to the question parking lot for us, and then whoever's next for the next prompt, we'll love to hear from you.
I'll go.
Thank
Mine
you.
was the team disagrees with the feedback given by another team, does not incorporate any changes, and does not revise their project. I'd probably guide them into saying you have, no matter what you're doing, you can always find a way to improve it and a way to make it better. You may not agree with what the other group had, but you could look at their ideas and maybe take a portion of what they had to make yours improved, I guess.
I love it. I'm like trying to do body language. Yes. Very good. Okay, do you want to take the final scenario?
Sure, well, this just goes to show you just can never pigeonhole anybody, that they always can surprise you. And I guess I would try to let that student really shine. I'm assuming it's kind of a rarity that you would call on the student and he would be paying attention. So I'd ask some follow-up questions, I guess, to let that student have the floor for a while and hopefully grow to like that spotlight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, when I was reading that scenario, I thought, wouldn't that be nice if that always happened? Where they just are paying that much attention. All right, if you don't mind jumping to the next slide, Scott, or unless this is Julie sharing. Thank you very much. So as a whole, during group work, I guess, because like I said, Unit 4 is going to be a lot of group work. How are you going to make sure to address and assess individual learning goes on? And then what learning strategies is going to support individual assessment? And I'm going to throw in a really cool resource that code.org shared just in regards to common teaching practices, because I think a lot of us are thinking, oh my goodness, like how maybe this is the hardest part when it comes to group work and individual work. It's kind of like being a classroom teacher. How do we make sure the whole class is moving on and getting all their content, but yet all the individual students are learning? I mean, my goodness, if somebody could figure that out, we'd
I had a really cool, I get to go to lots of conferences because when because of my work, and I was at the foreign language conference a number of years ago, but they talked about group work and they called it the ticket to group work. And so like kids had to write a paragraph in the foreign language. And so everybody had to write that initial paragraph. Then they were put in their groups and the groups had to decide which paragraph they were going to use. And so if a kid did not come with a paragraph or didn't do the paragraph, they ended up having to do all of the subsequent work alone. Does that make sense? And so she called it the ticket to group work. And so you had to do something before you could move on. And the other really cool thing that she did was she was really random, and it kind of reminds me of what we do with Zoom breakouts, and we're not really random, but you know, it's like we're like, we don't necessarily have to call on every breakout room, you know, I mean, it's like breakout room 2, would you please share your thoughts, you know, and so it's like you don't necessarily you're not necessarily going in a I mean, you have a pattern because you keep track of what rooms you've called on, but you don't necessarily have to call on everybody all the time. And so it was very interesting how they broke that out. And this was a number of years ago at the foreign language teachers, but I could see it being really useful for this kind of work too, that ticket to group work where they do something, work it together, and then, you know, and so that kind of gives them that at least they've done something on the group. So hope that helps.
So is it like a statement where they all agree that they're going to do something and then they do their group work and then do they revisit that paragraph or?
So they all write a paragraph on a prompter. So like in this situation, they all maybe make their, you know, they do some sort of a concept for a app or, you know, whatever. And then when they come back, they get together in their groups, they decide which one they're going to go deeper on. And that's the one that is then expanded on. And so everybody does like in this situation for you guys, everybody would have to do some of that decomposition, to try to think about the different ways that you would want to break down the project, because that would be part of that initial, you know, app development type thing. And then the whole group would then kind of fine tune and go into it further. And so when I say ticket to group work, basically it's some task that everybody can do, so that when they get together as a group, there's a, you know, a quick assessment of which one we're all going to do together then and fine tune.
Thank you so much, Julie. That's awesome. And then I always think too about Google Classroom and even our Zoom calls this summer, thinking about if somebody really didn't want to do the work, they don't have any proof. I mean, it doesn't show that somebody hasn't commented on their slide or their part. So I think that's a really neat opportunity we have too, as far as our distance learning is concerned. So what I just shared with you is a resource that code.org put together that basically has modifications for common teaching practices that we can just put that in our back pocket for right now. But you can see all these teaching practices and some examples of how they're doing peer feedback and multiple choice assessments and pair programming. Let's say when you're socially distanced, how in the world do you pull that off? And I'll just kind of keep going down these slides. Thank you, Julie, for showing that off. We're now I lost my spot. I think we're on the differentiation scenarios. Is that where we're at? I believe so. And it's very hard for me to talk. I have this little piece in my mouth that makes it really awkward for me to say certain syllables or vowels. But again, when we're talking in group work, you're going to have early finishers and struggling students as well. And so how are we going to make sure these learners are still keeping up with the rest of the group or making sure they don't fall behind? If you see a scenario in front of you that you feel like you can relate to, go ahead and just jump in as a group, or if you want to utilize the group chat to chat about some of these scenarios and how it's happened to you. This time there's only 2 scenarios. I'll give you some time to kind of read through it and see if anyone has something they'd like to share with the group. Does anyone have anything that they're using in their classroom right now that addresses how you deal with the students that do finish early or the students that are struggling?
I've been using the level up concept for early finishers for a couple of years now, and it's been awesome because it's included with the assignment or the activity, but it's at the very end. So as you get to the very end, it'll say submit your work to the classroom or turn in your stuff to the classroom, and then the next page will then they know at some point in the beginning of the semester that they can continue to this level up, which will then further that concept and allow them to really just make the concept sparkle. And for the early finishers, you have two types of early finishers, ones that are genuinely curious about taking it farther, and then you have the earlier finishers that are doing it to just get it done. And so to address that, like it's something that you kind of have to do at the beginning of a semester, beginning of a class, where you create that culture of, naturally we always seek to find more for ourselves, and in some ways greedy ways, but in other ways in very beautiful discovery type of ways, in that we're discovering more new things all the time, or how to like life hacks. You find things that like really work well. And when I have activities where I have early finishers, they can go to the level up and then they can take it even farther. Whereas those that are struggling, it's kind of like finding the cut score on a test. What's the very least they could do as a struggling student, but still get the concepts that are needed. How are we covering all the standards we need to cover, and and having them not get to the level up part. And then the level up part for the strugglers, it's always there for a future time if they were to be caught up or find extra time or outside of class. But everybody gets the same. It's the equity part of it. They all are able to satisfy standards, but then level up where they can.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll give anyone else a chance to chime in. Otherwise, we can go ahead and jump to the next slide. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about grouping scenarios. And you're going to have two scenarios. Same thing. I'll just if one of these scenarios really speaks true to you, and I'm looking either at Tina or Kay, since Nate jumped in on the last one. How will the way you actually group the students support individual and collaborative learning? And I love how Julie kind of preloaded this with our ticket for a group, or what did you call it? Ticket for a group project. I had a neat ring when you said it.
A ticket for group work.
Ticket for group work. I like it. So go ahead and give yourself a minute to read these two scenarios, and Tina or Kay or Nate or anybody really, if anyone has something that you would like to add for how you can support both individual and group learning.
On the first one, where you have a team that's split into pairs rather than working as a group of 4, sometimes if you give a task to other, like if these two kids here are working together, if you can split them up and say, okay, now I want you two to look at this thing and you two to look at this thing, and then share together with what you're thinking of. I seem to have a lot of the B in my 7th grade class. They have 24 of them, and there's a lot of them that are in that group that they're there to get it done, or some that are struggling, and it's a big scenario with lots of different ones. So not coming to me and not getting things finished on time seems to be a struggle in that particular class. I'm lucky I have some of them in City Hall, so I can kind of catch them up. So sometimes you can do that, but that doesn't always work either. So
Excellent. Thank you for sharing those real life experiences. All right. If you want to move to the next slide. Ooh. All right. I'm just going to stop you on the share out and the wrap up. We can kind of talk a little bit about additional considerations. I'm not sure if that's right after the wrap up, but basically keep in mind that the focus for Unit 4, as much as we think it's about the app lab, it really is more about learning. Sorry, it's not on learning to program using App Lab, but we really want to focus on students creating that empathy, like what Scott said at the beginning. How do we get the students to shift so they're not just thinking about themselves, they're thinking about others and how they can help for a greater good or a greater cause. And then looking at in computer science, how there's so many different roles to make a successful product, right? You just need to, it's like everybody needs to play to their strengths to make an excellent product to then give to the consumer or the students or whoever the consumer is. I remember in one example, it was the grandparents. So thinking about a really great product, there's so many different facets that go into it and perspectives and again, utilizing those strengths. And then the computer solving or the problem solving process, that's a huge one that you're going to constantly, Unit 4 actually changes their problem solving process just slightly. And it's I just think it's beautiful the way they did that to kind of focus again on that empathy. All right, so finally, let's look a little bit more at some considerations that will help us when we go to plan for Unit 4. And I apologize if we didn't spend a whole lot of time planning the way you originally thought we'd plan. We just kind of talked about each thing and what you think might happen and how we can handle it. But let's go ahead and look at before you do group work. This came up a lot, kind of establishing those group norms and the culture of your classroom. It's all going to come back to how we start the year and how we started the unit. And you all, if you're in the midst of Unit 2 or Unit 3 right now, just know every unit is kind of a refreshing time that you just can start over and say, hey, wow, we need to work on this as a class and let's make this our focus, and just being as transparent as possible. So collaborative student learning and student expectations are going to be huge. So if you want to go ahead and go to slide 38. Really quick, I'd like us to kind of do this together. So establishing norms, setting those expectations, and pacing lessons. How are we going to do, how can each of the following support collaborative student learning? So again, when you have those norms established, how is that going to support our collaboration? How is setting expectations going to support the group work? Things like that. If you guys would like to just type in the notes as we go, if somebody would like to give some ideas for additional considerations that we haven't touched on, I'd love if you just do what you feel comfortable. If you'd like to just type them yourselves or talk out loud. I think we're going to have some common themes too that are right in front of us. Who was saying something that I interrupted? Nope. My son. He's the one interrupting. I apologize tremendously. My husband was supposed to work late tomorrow night, you guys. Not tonight. I thought he would be babysitting. But such is life. So thank you all for being such good sports with me. I love how you're all just typing away, coming up with so many great ideas. I love hearing the communication and feedback to support learning and learning from each other. 3 before me. Pacing during e-learning is something I need help with. Absolutely. Looking at the optional, little optional part, how can each of these be modified to support collaborative student learning with distance learning? The reason that's optional is because I don't know if I want to tackle that. No, I think so many of us are really struggling with distance learning and how we can still have those norms and how we even promote the attendance. And just, I mean, my goodness, if if a student doesn't get on the Zoom call, how do we have them collaborate with their classmates? There's just a lot of real life problems that we have in front of us. Are there any ideas that you guys see in front of you that you'd like to try as a teacher, especially when it comes to collaboration and learning empathy with students, cultivating that empathy is learning? Hold still, hold still. Did Scott just ditch out on us? There he is. I thought you left us, Scott.
Oh, you know me, just always leaving the meetings randomly when, just for spite.
Yeah, just keep us on our toes. I see.
Yeah, you'll be this
loosen up.
Caring Act.
Yeah. I see the idea of loosening up the control to allow for student creativity. That's awesome. That's hard. I just had a teacher come up to me the other day, and all it was a 45-minute session. And she said that was the hardest thing, was to not be in front of the classroom doing all that front loading and walking around and letting the students do their thing. But guess what came of it? The creativity. So I love that you wrote that about allowing creativity, because it just happens naturally when teachers do kind of loosen up those purse strings, if you will. What else? I didn't mean to kind of fly through this session about kind of planning out Unit 4. Is there anything else you guys see that would be a great thing to potentially use in your classroom, or something you hadn't thought of? Hopefully, hold still. There you go. Good job. Should we chat a little bit about pacing when we're distance learning? Yeah.
It always seems to take a lot longer that way. No matter what class it is, it could be physics or computers or Spanish, everything takes longer.
Right.
I find myself having to prioritize what I really have to cover.
Absolutely. One thing that I've found really impressive with code.org so far is that we're essentially, the fact that we're in Unit 4 right now, which does call for a lot of group work. Most of us aren't teaching Unit 4 yet. So by the time we actually dive into Unit 4, the lesson plans will very often have a little link with distance learning ideas for how we can incorporate this in a distance learning setting. And it's just kind of why I really love the curriculum, is because they are always working to improve, and it's very fluid. And I know we talked about that at the beginning of this whole academic year workshop. It is common practice to, just like, how do I explain this? back in the day, we had the book, right? We had the book that had the lesson plans if we're lucky, or we have the curriculum in the book. Well, that book doesn't change until you get it in the next publication date. And even then, you can't guarantee the publisher has really changed a whole lot. Code.org, it's recommended that you print out the lessons literally that week that you teach the lesson, because it's constantly being updated and changed to the situation that we're in. And like I said, by the time we're actually teaching Unit 4, I wouldn't doubt if they have revamped and have a whole nother little slide down at the bottom for distance learning in particular. Has anyone noticed that since you've taught, especially in Unit 2, any distance learning things that came up? No. All right. It doesn't ever really tell us who
It-
responds to
it-
the chat. Oh,
It
what's
looks
that?
like it's there. It looks like it's there.
Perfect.
I just went in and looked at Unit 4 real quick, and they say we have modifications for Unit 4. And it looks a little bit like some of the stuff that you shared with us, but then they have, so some of those techniques that you were talking about, like you kind of shared with us, but then they have stuff linked out for Unit 4. I just dropped it in the chat. And we
Excellent. Thank you.
I don't know where I'll put it. I'll put it in the slides. Okay.
Perfect. That'd be wonderful. Especially just, I just think the big cities there's so much more distance learning than, I shouldn't compare big cities to South Dakota, but code.org has really, I personally think they've stepped up to the challenge and they've done a great job. And even as us facilitators, we've sat in on Zoom calls, and the way they model the Zoom calls is just really refreshing, so that it's not, like Tina said, you have to be so selective in what you choose. So I remember, Scott, you might agree, but when we were teaching this last school year, I swear we spent a good 2 hours on just the term decomposition to the point where I was almost like, oh boy, everybody, I think we all get this, like, let's move on. And so even as a facilitator, it felt like we could almost be a little bit more selective in what we choose. And so I don't know about you guys, but just the fact that we only spent about 5 minutes on just that terminology, that was a choice that luckily Scott and I didn't have to make. Code.org made that for us and made it as a smaller piece of the puzzle, if you would. I hope I'm kind of connecting those dots for you all, but I totally understand how it's really hard to decide, and you spend so much more time on our distance learners in some aspects than we do on the students right in front of us. And I just really like that code.org is keeping up with us. And I'm not saying that about everybody, my goodness. I just know that's been a little bit of a feedback from teachers. They feel like they're either being a really good distance learning teacher and a terrible in-classroom teacher, or the opposite. They're really good in person, but then they let their distance learners kind of fall by the wayside. And my goodness, you try doing 2 jobs, like one thing's gonna have to give. And I just commend everybody for being here and smiling, even though you feel like a train hit you. But yeah, is there anything else we'd like to add to this slide? My baby is just now falling asleep. I'm rocking him. It's like, my goodness. now that we reached slide 38. Awesome. All right, well, let's just go ahead and keep plugging away. I think we kind of already touched a little bit about this. I love the ticket to group work that Julie probably threw it in the slide. Be a strategy or idea that you would like to try. And I saw the ask 3 and then me strategy. That's a strategy that I'd always recommend you to try if you haven't done it already. That just already promotes promotes that collaborative work. Is there anything else that we'd like to add to this slideshow before we move it on to the wrap up? No? All right, well, let's give each other a pat on the back and just remember all these resources that are here to help with you with all the challenges that you'll see. And they'll always add more as we go along. All right, Scott, if you want to take it away. I have not seen anything really in the question parking lot other than what we were all supposed to chew on with in regards to the group work.
Janie, is this in the question parking lot? And I like it's dealing with absences. Did you see that one? There's an absence scenario.
Oh.
I think what this dealt with was like in many circumstances, especially this year, you know, in a normal year, you might have a student that is gone for a couple days or, you know, a week or something, and you might run into this. That's more of a common scenario probably even now, where maybe a student has to be gone for 2 weeks. But I think the thing is the question comes down to is how do we handle this? Now, I'm going to defer to our group too, about this, just kind of see what ideas that you would bring forward if a student was gone for a few days.
Yeah,
Do we
thank you,
have
Scott.
any-
I think I purposely skipped over that one. I was like, yeah, that's a tough one. Let's go to the next scenario. So yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I don't even know if I really have a great answer to this one either, because everybody, we could go through this, and, you know, everyone in here is a veteran teacher, has a lot of great ideas, and, you know, you're going to have people that are going to get behind. You know, one of the things that I think is and thank you, Nate, for sharing that here. Just a moment, we'll talk about that. You know, this is really a good opportunity for those learners that get done quickly, that are truly knowledgeable about what we do and give honest efforts. This is an opportunity to help somebody else out. I know that that's an activity that I use when somebody's gone for a while, to have that person come along to help facilitate that other child. Not only does the child that gets done early learn from the other child, but the other child that was gone for a while also benefits from that relationship too. So, Nate, could you elaborate, just kind of, I know I could reread that, but could you just kind of elaborate on what you typed there for us?
Sure. So since I have a Chromebook, it has a built-in mic and camera. So if are you guys using Google Classroom?
Yes.
So, and then you notice they updated it for this year. They have the Google Meet link that's at the top by like the title of your class. So I visit that, I go to that, I join it, and I encourage any students that are Department of Health coded, they're at home, to visit during the class time for their normal day, if they don't sleep in all day, which is what I think most of them are doing. And then if they catch the lesson, which, you know, again, a lot of them don't, they still get the chance to catch the recording. So you'll go in at the bottom, there's a, you know, where you would present your screen. Instead of doing that, you go in and record. And since you're not capturing any students in the meeting, if no one is there, you can capture the screen. And then when you click on stop recording, there's a moth in here. When you click stop recording, it saves to the Google Drive for you, and then it should email you and tell you that it's ready when it's at least when it's on the Google Drive. Then it has to process. If it's the full period, then it might take a while, but then I take it and post in the Google Classroom.
Kate
Perfect,
posted in the
thank you.
chat that she also records her Zoom and posts it in the Google Classroom. And I was going to say that one of the things that I'm seeing a lot more of this year is because so many more of us are using a learning management system of some sort, and we're posting the assignments, and there's potentially ways for students to work collaboratively even if they are not face to face, like on Google Slides and things like that. That this scenario is there's more opportunities for students to participate. And I know if they're really truly sick, or I mean, there is a lot of things that go on where they may not be able to be fully present, but at the same time they have more opportunities than in previously when we weren't online and we didn't have the learning management system. So I'm glad to see that you guys are using all of those tools. Now if we can just get our students to all use them.
Yeah, has anyone read that meme that it's like, oh, our kids know how to use TikTok and Snapchat, but they can't figure out how to join the Zoom call or Google Classroom homework? That I feel like that's kind of spot on.
All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll go back to our slideshow and where we left off. I believe it was slide 42. Wait a little bit for it. All right, so question parking lot, slide 42-ish. If we can get to that slide, there we go. And this slide right here just basically talks about reviewing the goals of kind of what we get in from kind of the tail end of Unit 4 to all of Unit 5. And I won't read all those overview goals to you. I'll let you read through that yourself. But that just kind of gives kind of the highlights of what we're trying to accomplish through this. As we close and going on to slide 43, we kind of doing some house cleaning issues today, and then we'll go to slide 44-ish, I do believe. All right, just a couple reminders for everybody. Our next meeting we're going to have will be Wednesday, January . And the last thing that we'll have you do is on slide 45 is there is a link there that for the survey. So slide 46 we don't have to worry about. That is the question parking lot that we just already went through. But just kind of like I said, remember about a month from now we'll meet up. And if you could do the survey, we certainly would appreciate it. So this will be our last meeting of the year, and we hope everybody has a good holiday break here coming up. So hopefully the weather stays nice.
And then he just disappeared.
Gone.
If there's anything else that you guys would like to email us or ask in our survey, we have a really open line of communication with code.org that will for sure pass on or share with you any more resources that they come out with, especially in regards to all our distance learning questions and pacing strategies. And Scott, you're back. Life is good. My baby went to sleep.
My disappearing act for the third.
Right.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Anything else? Anything else? We got any questions or things that we want to clarify before we close the meeting up here for the evening?
I just want to say I really appreciate everyone's commitment to this academic year. Oh my goodness, these monthly meetings really hit home. It's like, my gosh, it's been a month already, and it's exciting because we get to see all of your faces. But it's like, wow, a month has gone by.
Yeah.
Although the month of October, I'd have to say was exceptionally long. I think it was where my baby was, like he wasn't sleeping, and then school felt like it was the month of, kind of like felt like March, like last March, to be honest. But anyway, it's just really awesome to see everybody here. And then Julie has the recording. So if you next January, if you're feeling like, sorry, this January, if you're feeling like Kay, if you feel like you do tonight, just remember we do have the recording that you can watch. But we really appreciate that you stuck it out and hung out with us.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming. It's good to see you all, and have a good holidays, and we'll see you in January.
You too. See ya.